Another student approaches Yu Kwang-ik, requesting that he be knocked out, as people sleep soundly following his punches. Yu Kwang wonders how the word got out, but he learns that gossip has spread far and wide. Kwan is questioned about his dream technique on a night when the first team asked. He struck each of them on the neck, saying, "May you dream of me." The next day, the first team leader thanked Kwan at breakfast for the heavenly dream. Practice commences, and the coach shows no mercy. Yu Kwang-ik notices a worn-out kid trailing behind him, exhausted from running. Kwan inquires if he's alright, to which the kid says he's fine and to keep going. In conversation, the overweight kid seems ready to quit, but Kwan remembers the Korean manga Crown Rush, and the quote, "Become a man who never gives up." Kwan tells the kid that if he intended to give up, he shouldn't have started, and that Kwan will help him finish. Together, they run towards the finish line as Kwan encourages the kid to regulate his breathing. Sadly, time runs out, and they don't cross the finish line. Both receive a penalty of 5 points. Kwan reassures the kid, saying they'll complete the task tomorrow. The kid asks Kwan why he helped him. Kwan believes that helping someone who's fallen due to helplessness or started drowning doesn't require a reason, as the person would likely feel the same. Thus, Kwan doesn't need a reason either. In the locker room, the guys discuss putting the first team to sleep again using the special technique. Kwan questions his friend about Gui T-Hyun's sour mood. Apparently, Gui found Woo Mi-ho's lost wallet in the cafeteria and tried to return it to her, hoping to meet her, but she brushed him off. Gui has been upset since. Yu Kwang attempts to cheer Gui up but realizes he's hopelessly in love. As Kwan leaves the locker room, he encounters the fifth team, who request to be knocked out for sleep. To execute the perfect knockout, Kwan has to adjust his strength based on the person's physical state. Over time, he masters this skill, and people line up nightly for a good night's sleep after a tough day. Insomnia unites everyone, and the instructors seem unfazed by the situation. Most guys enter the dream world through Kwan's technique, and he gains fame and the nickname Neck Kwan. Eventually, their training nears completion. During his training in alien-related lessons, Kwan gained significant knowledge. HVARM, a division of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Security, was an organization whose members infiltrated black holes or eliminated aliens that emerged from them. Although the situation was relatively calm, the potential for monster attacks remained, necessitating the presence of those who could fight, like HVARM. Kwan wondered why his father had sent him to the training camp. As the orientation neared its midpoint, Kwan encountered new elements at the training camp. First, there were lectures about aliens given by a boomer instructor. Second, Nuna's lectures, alongside care, informed students about tools that could aid immortals in combat. Nuna taught the students about a combat potion called BB-8. In critical situations, this potion could be injected directly into the bloodstream for an instant effect. However, excessive use could lead to addiction, even for immortals. An overdose would result in lifelong withdrawal symptoms. Lastly, the candlestick instructor provided weapon training. This was followed by a return to running, strength training, martial arts training, and body conditioning. Kwan continued assisting the chubby man in his self-improvement, and others joined in as well. As the trainees adapted to their daily routines, Kwan sent fewer people into the realm of Morpheus. Their stamina improved, making the morning runs much more manageable. Eventually, even the chubby man could complete the run independently. A month passed, and the training came to an end. No one dropped out due to penalty points, so all were accepted as HVARM trainees. The orientation results, which considered both the training process and written exam scores, determined the final rankings. Monetary rewards were given to the top 3, Kai Hyo-min placed 3rd, Yoongi Nam 2nd, and Woo Mi-ho 1st. After the awards, Kwan and his friends planned a celebratory feast. Kwan contemplated the many friendships he had formed while heading to the grocery store. As they sat in the barracks, chatting amongst themselves, a stranger entered. Introducing himself as Nam Myung-jin, the director of HVARM, he greeted the group. Kwang was already somewhat familiar with Nam Myung-jin, having read about him before. Nam Myung-jin was born in 1973, served on the emergency operations team for around 8 years, and was a first-generation immortal. He was one of the 10 immortals that made up the Korean branch of the current Old Force. Nam Myung inquired about the trainees' experiences, asking if their training was challenging and so forth. He then personally thanked each of the top 3 winners. Calling Kwan forward and referring to him as a half-breed, Nam Myung assured him that it wasn't a bad thing and that he expected to see Kwan at work in his office. Nam Myung left a gift for the cadets, which they initially assumed was alcohol. Upon opening it, they discovered it was actually Blunt, a mind-altering cocktail for immortals that dulled the senses and caused lethargy. This drink could even put an insomniac immortal to sleep. There were 10 jars in the box, 1 for each cadet. Jong-gi Nam tossed the jar to the floor, falling asleep without consuming it. Kai Ho-mit approached Kwan, thanked him for his help, and handed him a note. The note revealed that Principal H. Wallam had a habit of observing certain applicants and testing them. Those who passed his test could receive privileges, but those who failed to meet his expectations wouldn't enjoy an easy life at the company. All the boys drank the Blunt in one gulp and passed out. The first day of work finally arrived, and Kwan found himself assigned to the 3rd External Security Team. A short-eyed, red-haired girl greeted him as his handler, handing him a list of high-ranking HVARM members to memorize by the following day. She explained Kwan's job duties before leaving. Later, Kwan joined his friends for lunch and asked about their work experiences. Jeong-gi told Kwan that he heard director Nam Myung had personally intervened in Kwan's assignment. The director was known for considering applicants' department preferences, so it wasn't the first time he had involved himself in human resources decisions. The issue lay in Kwan's department, the third external security team from the dispatch headquarters. The team consisted of the best, but it also had a notorious reputation for eliminating trainees who failed to fulfill their duties. Kwan's supervisor was well known and even had a nickname, the Butcher. In addition to him, there was a man who resembled a panda and acted as the company's control tower. The third individual was Kim Jonah, a superhuman created through the use of secret drugs that granted him forbidden powers. These drugs were the result of government experiments involving magic and alchemy, though the number of human subjects used during those experiments remained undisclosed. Kim Jonah was nicknamed the Knife because she would cut before the boss even arrived. While discussing this, Kim Jonah entered and angrily told Kwan that he was supposed to study the list, not pry into his co-workers' backgrounds. A cook served the group food on the house. At work, Kwan mistakenly addressed the head of the first support team department by the wrong name, causing everyone in the office to be annoyed by his absurdity. Despite his blunders, Kwan's reputation as a sleeper allowed him to get to know his team members better. Lee Chun-bung was a pure-blood leader who excelled in hand-to-hand combat, making him the best in HRM. Lee Ding-hoon, a half-breed assistant, was skilled in both shooting and hand-to-hand combat, serving as a control tower in tense situations. However, he was also quite annoying, having chosen to focus on more intellectual pursuits since he wasn't particularly talented at fighting. Jonah Kim was a medically enhanced human with exceptional abilities among the few civilians in HRM. He was a former Special Forces member with a grade hand-to-hand combat skills and B-grade shooting skills, essentially a pathfinder. A week later, Kwan and his colleagues were called to a higher unit for a regular test in a gravity control device using new technology discovered beyond the gate. Lee Dong-hoon refused to take the test, and Kim Jonah had already completed it, leaving only Kwan. As Kwan entered the device, Lee Chun-bung instructed him to set the maximum difficulty in order to sharpen his skills and potentially develop insensible sadism. This condition was a mental illness exclusive to immortals, causing them to lose all senses and derive a twisted pleasure from witnessing others' pain, as it reminded them of sensations they no longer experience themselves. This test would determine Kwan's resilience. To everyone's astonishment, Kwan remained composed even when the device's speed was increased to 10G. Inside the device, Kwan realized that he barely knew anything about his team. The pressure he experienced was similar to the training level of werewolves. A poorly trained immortal's body is close to that of a normal human, so such pressure would feel like a squeeze on all of their insides. As Kwan endured the test, he was asked to recite the multiplication table and managed to answer the questions correctly. The team began to doubt whether Kwan was on drugs and decided to send him for a drug test. After completing the training session, Kwan felt a surge of energy, likely due to the combination of immortal and werewolf blood within him. As he exited the device, Kim Jonah handed Kwan a handkerchief and told him he did well. The boss coldly instructed Kwan to return to his workplace. Following the test, the team's attitude towards Kwan changed. It seemed possible that he would be assigned some truly important cases. Panda handed Kwan 3 folders, the first about the numbering of outsiders, the second about the types of potions, and the third about the rules for using the equipment and its structure. Kwan was given 4 days to prepare, although he was told that others had taken only 2 or 3 days to learn the same material. In 4 days, there would be a test, and for every incorrect answer, Kwan would have to spend 1 hour in the training room. In a flashback, it is revealed that Kwan broke all the device records. The warden inquired how this was possible, and an employee explained that it was incredibly rare for an immortal to be born with such exceptional physical fitness. Kwan's abilities were innate and extraordinary. The probationary period is called that because it is a time when trainees learn everything they need to know about working in an office and determine if it suits them or not. However, HVARM inundated Kwan with a wealth of information, and for 4 days, his colleagues continually tested his readiness. After 4 days, the exam began, and Kwan consistently got 3 questions wrong out of 10 each day. HVARM had invested heavily in company equipment, providing various practice areas in the building such as a fitness room, a pain tolerance room, a visual acuity training room, sensory containment training, and hologram fights. Kwan's long training sessions led even the instructors to regard him warily. Kwan continued to study the material after his training sessions. His workload seemed excessive, but when his mother suggested he quit, Kwan refused. This was the path he had chosen, and he believed it would lead him to his goal the fastest. Over the next 2 weeks, Kwan started learning new information about HVARM. The external security team had 3 primary missions: disaster relief, prevention of special species terrorist attacks, and support for other teams. Kwan's team, composed of purebloods, half-breeds, and medically enhanced humans, primarily provided support. One day, while on his way to the gym, Kwan encountered his boss. They discussed Kwan's high school days, including whether he was a bully or if he had been bullied. Quan replied that he had always tried to avoid conflict and help the weak. Seeing the determination in Quan's eyes, his boss challenged him to a boxing match, to which Quan agreed. The boss invites Quan to a boxing match at 3 o'clock in the training hall. He assigns Miho as a backup to evaluate their work performance. Miho asks Quan why he provoked the boss, and Quan replies that it was necessary to give the boss what he wanted. Quan tells Miho that he wasn't offended, he simply wanted to test the best fighter of HRM, the S-ranked boss Lee Junban. At 3 in the afternoon, everyone meets in the training hall. Without warming up, Quan starts attacking Lee Jun with jabs in various combinations. However, Lee is too agile for such strikes. A moment comes when Quan and Lee simultaneously attack each other, and Quan's ears start ringing. He recalls the first time his mother took him to training when he was 15 years old. He had gotten angry over his mother's trivial words, and instead of school, she took him to the gym. Quan analyzes Lee Jun's strike. It happened in a flash as they both swung their fists. The boss extended his hand and grabbed Quan by the forearm, breaking his arm bones and striking his head with his elbow. It was incredibly fast and precise. Lee taunts Quan, suggesting that he managed to land a hit despite being an irregular. Quan admits to himself that he wanted to test his boss's skills, but in reality, their fight is a duel between a werewolf and an immortal. Quan thought he could easily win, but this was too arrogant on his part. He takes a step back and asks the boss to attack him again. Quan and Lee begin sparring. Quan strikes at Lee, but to no avail. Lee tries to distract Quan with various questions, such as whether he joined the company for the money, in an attempt to break his concentration. Quan remains serious and mentally stable, continuing to attack. Lee's movements are too fast, making it impossible to find an opening for a counterattack. Quan doesn't understand why Lee is faster than him, as Quan should be faster and stronger thanks to his werewolf power. Remembering his coach's words, Quan had only learned the basics, and there was no time for anything more. Additionally, Lee is a high-level pureblood. But that doesn't mean Quan intends to lose. During the sparring session, Lee asks questions that Quan doesn't answer. In turn, Quan asks Lee why he joined the company, and Lee replies that it was out of a sense of duty. In the end, Lee lands a heavy punch on Quan's face, and Quan lunges at Lee, attempting to hug him and break his bones. Unexpectedly, Quan collapses. One of the colleagues comments that this time, the killing of the trainee exceeded all expectations. The killing of trainees is a traditional ritual of the 3rd External Security Team. It serves to humble the newcomer and show them the other side of the job. The boss says that Quan is a beast since he managed to break an arm and crack a rib. Lee asks for Quan to be taken to the medical center. Kim Jonah asks about Quan's final evaluation. Lee analyzes how Quan dodged his sudden attack, in which he concealed his energy and fell for a trick to deliver a counterstrike. Quan has hidden potential and a strong will with fighting spirit. Lee can't recall anyone with such talent across so many parameters. It feels as if Quan has been fighting since childhood, which is why he can defend himself so well. In reality, Lee wanted to use only one technique, sensory disruption, but ended up having to use 3 secret techniques against the half-blood. After all, the true talent is now lying on the mats behind him. Quan is trying to figure out why he blacked out during the sparring match with Lee. Naturally, Lee doesn't reveal his secret, but he asks Quan to write a report on the situation. Quan needs to determine the cause of his blackout and write a detailed report. Of course, no one shares any information with Quan, so he has to find out on his own. Meanwhile, at a conference, one of the departments presents a report. The analysis department does various work, tracking dangerous individuals and investigating unconfirmed theories and predictions. When it comes to surveillance, swift action is necessary when special species are involved in a person's disappearance, so analyzing situations is crucial. Quan is still pondering how Lee managed to defeat him in the sparring match. A colleague from another department continues their presentation, mentioning a project called Oracle. The project's essence lies in creating a system that predicts the future. However, the project has been shut down for now. Miho raises her hand and says that predictors do exist, but they aren't like something out of a fantasy. All predictors say that the future is changeable. Because it constantly changes, revealing any time period creates a new branch of future events. If you reveal a prophecy, it becomes a lie. But if only a few people know about it and don't spread the information, the future can come true. This theory was confirmed, and the Oracle project was based on it. However, the project failed. The problem lies in the human brain. Thoughts in our heads don't always tell the truth. Many people were deceived by plausible but false facts, causing the project to suffer astronomical damage. If you believe what is true, there are countless absurd moments hidden within that truth. This is why misconceptions arise. Quan then recalls the words his friend told him at the training camp. The principle of hiding one's energy is confusion and perception. Thanks to their extraordinary sensory organs, immortals can block the information perceived by an opponent. Quan realizes how his boss managed to defeat him and rushes out of the room to his workplace. It's simple. The boss used a deceptive energy concealment technique. The boss was prepared in advance for Quan's attack, looking for the right moment to knock him out. This is something true masters, who have survived countless battles, can possess. Quan's heart races as he realizes this. He decides to test his theory on Lee by attacking him. With maximum concentration and blocking out all other sounds, Lee focuses solely on his opponent. He begins to sense Lee's energy everywhere. Lee asks Quan what he's doing, and Quan replies that he's submitting his homework report. Quan believes this approach will be much more interesting. Quan thought his answer would be much more accurate. Lee replies that the answer is correct, but now someone has to clean up the mess Quan made. The workday comes to an end, and Lee and Quan's colleagues go home. Lee tells Quan to clean up everything he did and then he can be free. Kim Jong tells Lee that Quan hid his energy, and that's why he guessed the secret. Lee asks about Quan's physical condition, and Kim Jong answers that there are only a few people like Quan in the company. If Quan had been trained properly, he wouldn't have shown his carelessness, but he decided to test his theory in practice. The next day, Lee tells Kim Jong to take Quan on a rank D assignment due to a shortage of personnel. Kim takes Quan with her, and they go down to the 6th floor arsenal. Equipped, they head to the assignment. Arriving at their destination, they receive a report over the radio. 1. UC Hotline, activation of contactless alarm system. 1. Alien number 1. UC, the probability of other aliens appearing. Hot, the speed of black hole openings. Line, aliens appearing one by one. Contactless alarm, a slightly noisy security system. Quan, seeing the hole, remembers an incident 9 years ago involving the opening of huge gates. There was a similar hole in front of him, and he decided to destroy all the creatures that crawled out of the black hole. Today will mark the beginning of his journey. As they prepare, the black hole begins to expand. Kim asks for help, and the operator tells them to leave because a team will be sent to close the hole. However, there is a residential area 4 to 5 kilometers from the hole, and if our heroes don't do something now, aliens will pour out of the hole straight into the city. An alien appears from the hole, a blind dog. The operator orders them to retreat, but they don't listen. In last year's car accidents, fewer than 1,000 people died. Thanks to the development of artificial intelligence and scientific technologies found in white holes, the number of victims has been reduced by 1/3. However, due to alien attacks, between 5,000 and 10,000 people die annually. People have managed to reduce the number of deaths from car accidents and diseases, but when it comes to aliens, nothing has changed. Immortals are extremely valuable personnel, and the company won't sacrifice them for thousands of citizens. Aliens begin to emerge from the hole, and our heroes start shooting, turning off the radio and disobeying orders. Kim expected about 10 monsters to come from the hole, so they took 2 guns and a few bullets. But since the black hole has taken on a wavy shape, at least a few hundred aliens will now emerge from it. What should they do now? More and more dogs begin to appear from the black hole. Quan asks Kim what the plan is, and she replies that Quan will be the bait. Shooting and defending themselves from the dogs, at one point, one of the dogs lunges at Quan. Kim covers him, killing the dog in the process. Being immortal, thanks to his sensory organs, Quan can feel the changes happening in Kim's body. Not knowing how medicated people are created, but the power of Som significantly surpasses ordinary human standards. While Quan is shooting, Kim goes into hand-to-hand combat. At this moment, they run out of ammunition, and Quan joins Kim. Kim incredibly quickly manages to dodge monster attacks. She calculates their positions and maintains a favorable position. Her ranked combat skills are not for nothing. Distracted, a dog attacks Quan and bites his hand. Gathering his strength, he quickly kicks it away. Som's plan goes into action. Quan strains his sensory organs and releases energy, recalling the survival rules in the wild taught by his teacher. Quan attracts the dogs, which begin to attack him. At some point, the dogs surround Quan, but remembering his technique, he starts to defend himself. He has to deal with all of them, as the lives of innocent people are at stake. At this moment, reinforcements arrive and shoot the remaining hounds. The arriving group conducts an analysis, sees that there are more than 200 hounds, and wonders how the 2 of them managed to cope. Kim Jong answers that it wasn't both of them, but Quan alone. After the mission, Kim and Quan report to their boss, who starts scolding them. They disobeyed orders. Kim takes all the blame, but Lee says that since she's a first-rank employee, her punishment will be dismissal. Nothing better than that. After this situation, a disciplinary committee will be convened. Lee sends Kim Jong home, and tomorrow she'll report to the inspection department. Quan's punishment is writing daily explanatory notes that he must place on Lee's desk. Upon returning to the office, rumors were already circulating about Quan and Kim. Kim Yo-han tells Quan that interns' salaries are not reduced, nor are they fined, they are fired immediately. In this situation, Kim will have to shoulder all the responsibility. Although HWARM is under government control, it is still a commercial organization that needs to make a profit. Despite this, Quan and Kim saved people by breaking the rules. He made the right decision without any doubt. After the workday, Kim meets Quan and tells him, "Good job, you did well." At dinner, Quan talks to his mother about his day and how his colleague praised him. The next day, the disciplinary meeting begins. As Kim is being reprimanded for her disobedience, Quan enters. Quan stands by his words, as they led to saving innocent civilians. Lee tries to help Quan and defend him, but the committee head tells her to be quiet. In the end, everything works out, and the head of the inspection department takes Quan away. Returning to the office, Quan is asked how everything went and if there was anything interesting. Quan says that the boss defended them as much as he could, but he didn't mention being called into the inspection department. Shortly after Quan's return, Lee and Kim arrived. Kim's punishment was a ban on participating in operations for 13 days. It was evident that something had happened, as the punishment itself wasn't particularly severe. And then, the routine resumed. Every morning, Kwan wrote explanatory notes. As usual, Lee would pick on Kwan, and Kim, in turn, began training him. From time to time, she also shared with him secrets of fighting against their boss. With each incorrectly written explanatory note, Lee began to unleash not only verbal attacks but also fists. And Kwan adapted. There were no particular patterns in Lee's attacks, and even if it seemed like there were, it was a deception. This continued day after day until one day, Lee decided to ask Kwan what Shim Mayan had told him. Shim Mayan was an assistant from the 2nd External Inspection Team. A few days ago, he had invited Kwan to join his team but added that it was just a joke. Suddenly, Shim appeared, and Lee, with all his strength and anger, punched him in the face. He asked Shim why he wanted to lure Kwan to their team. But then, Park Pillow suddenly appeared. Park Pillow was the head of the External Inspection Team. As it turned out, it was Park's order to try to recruit Kwan. Lee told Park and all the other departments that Kwan was his intern, and no one would dare take him away. Park said they didn't have communism and there was freedom of choice, then turned to Kwan, asking if he wanted to switch departments. Kwan answered no. Park Pillow, age 30, had the nickname Royal Lord and was an elite immortal who rose to be the head of the inspection team. Pillow asked Kwan why he wanted to stay, and Kwan replied that there was still much to learn. Park and Shim left. After their departure, the assistant announced that there was a new assignment. Since there was no one else to send, Kwan would take on the task. He needed to go to the airport and act as a human detector. At the airport, they needed to catch someone specific, a shapeshifter. A shapeshifter is a creature capable of changing its appearance. The skill allows one to assume the shape they remember. The assistant showed Kwan a woman on a screen who worked as a freelance contractor, something like a mercenary. She passed on information and important documents, in other words, a spy. PWAT, a special task force to combat superpowers, had requested their help. Since the target could change appearance, only a werewolf could handle it, as they could detect the scent. Jian Jinam and Mai Ho, with Kwan essentially acting as a guard for the newcomers, would join Kwan's team. This meant that his combat skills were highly valued. Kwan, John, and Mai received a briefing from Kan Haimo, the assistant of the analytical department. The location was Incheon Airport. To avoid arousing suspicion, they needed to dress casually. The meeting time was 10 a.m., and at the airport, members of PWAT would join them. The head of PWAT, Lee Jae-hee, and Kan Haimo would be in the airport situation room for communication and monitoring. Kwan and Mai would patrol the 5th entrance. Jinam would sit in a tourist booth inside the airport and look for the target. PWAT also requested support from Real Guard, a security company. The members of Real Guard turned out to be werewolves who joined the mission. Kwan asked Kan why Jinam had to sit in the tourist booth, and the answer was that they needed an immortal with exceptional senses. Once the target was captured, airport security would help control the situation. The briefing ended. The next day at the airport, a guy started hitting on Mai Ho, flirting with her and asking for her phone number. She told him she was married, but he didn't believe her. At that moment, Kwan approached and introduced himself as her husband. Kwan and Mai Ho checked their communication with the other teams and received a tip, a man who appeared to be around 30, wearing a dark blue shirt and light jeans. The reason John Jinam received special treatment was his keen insight. He reacted to a wide variety of stimuli, and his sensory ability was different. Water and stones were different for John, he could sense the difference in everything. At that moment, Real Guard encountered the man with an 80% match. PWAT was supposed to neutralize the target while the heroes simply observed. Kwan recalled his father's words, saying that an immortal's power is determined by their sensitivity level. Usually, such people have terrible personalities, and it's good that Kwan wasn't like that. The difference between a pureblood and a half-blood was evident even during orientation. There was a huge difference in speed and skills. At that moment, they stopped the identified target, and PWAT asked people to disperse. But then, a message came through the radio, were they sure there was only one target?